Today we're going to do a couple of things. One, there were a couple of questions that came in that I want to address. We'll sort of do those in the last few minutes of today. And the main focus for today will be sort of the other corresponding half that we haven't really looked at yet when it comes to the back position, and that is, what is the defender looking to do? A lot of you could frame this, especially in a beginner series, you could frame this as almost everything we've been doing up to this point from the perspective of the person on offense is to really just get an idea of what you're going to be up against when somebody is on your back. It can be tough to learn escapes when you're thinking, okay, I know my escape is steps 1, 2, 3, 4, but how do I know if I'm on the right track? How do I know if I'm in danger? How do I know if I'm making good progress? Then I should just keep on moving forward. So a lot of what we've looked at is, what are those dangers? How do they come about? What are the ways somebody's going to dismantle your defenses? And now that those pieces are sort of in place, we can look a little more closely at, well, what do I do to actually defend, to actually escape? Since as a beginner, you're probably going to have your back taken more often than you're taking other people's back. So we want to have a good sense of what this looks like. So let's establish a few things here. Can I have you on my back, please? About this angle here. Now, when M is on my back, she'll generally have, as we've seen, one arm that goes over, one arm that goes under, her hands linked together, and her elbow goes in front of my shoulder. Since her right arm is over my shoulder, her head will go onto the opposite side here. And now she's got a seatbelt grip, she's got a head trap, and she's got 2 hooks. Now, if M could just have things go her way, she'd transform this into a body triangle. She might start trapping my arm and then developing her offense from here. So with that in mind, I'd start developing my defense. First thing I'm going to do is take that webbing sort of between the thumb and the first finger, and I'm going to place it on her strangle hand, and then I'm going to go ahead and cover that up. Now this is just to stop her from developing her grip further. I'm not really expecting a lot of my escape to come out of this grip. This is just to make sure that things don't get a lot worse. What's really going to make my escape work is my leg positioning and how I use my legs here. Let's actually scoot back just a little bit. So when M has this grip on me and I have my corresponding grip, I need to arrange my legs in a particular way. I want to have my right leg bent and pushing off the floor, and then my left leg will start to straighten out. And the reason for this is I want to have M's leg slide cleanly over my left as I use my right leg to drive us into the floor. Okay, so let's actually turn it one time. Now we'll go in this direction. So what does that look like? Well, M has her grip, she's got her head trap, she's got her hooks. I've got my grip, I've got my right leg set, and I've got my left leg straightening out. I'm going to make my way down to the floor here like this. Okay, now what I'm looking to do is to bring my head forward and around Emmy's head. Okay, so forward and around. Now we'll reset one more time, and just because of that space constraint, we'll sort of pick up where we left off. We had hooks, we had grips. I created a leg to push off the ground. I straightened out my other leg, and then from here, everything starts to move towards the floor. Now my head goes forward and around and down to the mat. I want to get rid of Emmy's bottom hook here. So now that with my straightened leg, I'm going to move it towards my bent leg, and if possible, I'm just going to fish it through directly. Okay, that won't always be possible. Sometimes when you bring that straightened leg towards the bent leg, you'll then have to take the bent leg and use it to push their foot off. And then I'm just going to start threading my legs through. I point my 2 knees up at the ceiling, and I bring my inside elbow down towards the ground. Okay. Now we'll come back and look at these details. Look at the details of this more closely. But I want to point out, this is that key development where now my inside elbows hit the ground and I'm officially out of the back position. Okay. What's likely going to happen here is M is going to try to get up on top of me towards the side control if she could. So she might release this grip and start to make her way to her knees and start to go up, and if she could, she would pin me in the side control like this. Okay? So what I want to be aware of as that happens is to join the inside elbow position with a knee. So my foot will go up high and my knee will be relatively low so that I can create an elbow knee frame, okay, which essentially looks like this. I want her to land on this elbow knee frame when she goes on top of me to get the side control. Okay, that won't always be possible. Sometimes you'll try to make that elbow knee frame and they'll land in your half guard. Sometimes they'll land on the elbow knee frame and it'll be essentially a battle like the end of a guard pass, where you're having to frame on them, move yourself away, and they're trying to wrestle to get past your guard finally. There's a few different ways it can play out, but overall my goal is to make the back position turn into an elbow knee frame, have them land on it, and then things are at least better than they were. She's not on my back anymore. She maybe has a side control. Maybe we're fighting for guard recovery, and maybe I have the half guard. That would probably be one of the better ways it could play out from the defender's perspective. Okay, so with all that in mind, let's look at this again. Right here. She's on my back, she gets her grip, her head trap, and her hooks. I get my first defensive grip, I get my second defensive grip. I want to put my right leg down to the floor, and I want to straighten out my left. I'm going to move my whole body down towards the straightened leg. I take my head forward and around so that my head can physically touch the mat. Now from this position, I need to get rid of her bottom hook. Never, ever, ever try to take your hand to pull the hook off. Instead, straight leg, move towards the bent leg. Sometimes it will fish out directly. Other times, the right will have to go in and assist the left to make its way out. And now I'm going to block out her two legs by pulling my heels to my butt. Again, at this point, it's going to be easy for me to get that inside elbow down to the floor, and I should expect a battle for her trying to go on top. I put my foot up higher than my knee, and I've got the elbow knee frame in place. She might be looking to create an underhook on me, in which case I'm going to move my head away, realign my guard, and then we're okay. Right? So, again, this is sort of I'm of two minds about this. One is they're on my back, so this is obviously less than ideal in a lot of ways. But given that, this is sort of an idealized way to escape from there. So obviously you don't want someone on your back, but if they're on your back, this would be an example of a very clean escape. There was no real danger of a submission. All of the various steps that I went through were completely uncontested until the very end when the other person realizes, oh, I'm losing the back, better go on top, better make something happen here, and then it becomes a battle for guard recovery. And this will sort of help bridge the gap between the back position as a defensive set of steps, and then guard recovery and playing guard, and will help sort of bridge the gap between the two as we move forward. So with that in mind, let's look at this one more time, and let's look at the special relationship of our center lines as we move, and how this relates to what she's trying to accomplish and what I'm trying to accomplish. So if we're here again, and partners on my back. Right now our two center lines are aligned here, and if M were able to establish all of her grips and hooks and things like this, she would want to move from parallel to perpendicular in order to finish me with a submission. So we have our grips in place, one leg goes bent, one leg goes straight. I move my head down towards the floor, I start releasing that bottom hook, my right leg can assist my left, and now at this point I bring that inside elbow down to the floor. Now what you'll notice is if I stop right here, and M is able to go across my body and get the underhook, now she's got me in a pin. And you'll see that her center line is perpendicular to mine. Okay, so it's important that not only do I establish that inside elbow, not only do I bring my foot up higher than my knee, but then I use that to create the elbow knee frame. And then most important of all is I move my center line so it starts to realign with hers, like this. Okay, and it's easy to lose track of that because your body is sort of feeling crunched up under the weight of the other person. They're trying to smash you, they're trying to control you, and you get to that elbow knee frame, and it's tempting sometimes to do something like this and just try to push them away with it. Okay, but once the elbow knee frame is in place, you never want to push like this and volunteer to separate the elbow knee frame. Always maintain the integrity of the elbow knee frame, and then just move your head away. Okay, and so we use that reference of the center line in order to make that something you can keep in mind. Got the elbow knee frame, but I don't use it to push them away. I use it to push myself away, and the way I know I'm done doing that is our center lines are in alignment again. Okay, so one more time from the back position. We go in, we establish our defensive grip. I use one foot on the ground, and keep in mind here, the reason we focus so much on the legs is Emmy's legs are not touching the floor. My legs are. So that's my big advantage. She's attached to me and my legs are attached to the ground, so I'm determining how both of us move right now. Okay? She's attached to whatever that movement ends up being, so if I go forward, backward, left or right, she's coming with me, but I am sort of in the driver's seat when it comes to what direction do we actually move. So I want to make the most of that by making one leg specifically committed to driving off the ground, and off of that drive, my second leg is going to release the hook. So I push myself into releasing this hook. Okay, so we have our grip, I straighten on my leg, I move myself down to the floor, my head goes forward and around. Now in this specific instance, I'm gonna be able to fish my left leg out by itself. If that wasn't possible, I would use my right foot to release the left, and I start making my way out to the side. Now I wanna get center line to center line with her, so as she goes up on top, my foot goes high and my elbow knee frame is in place. I move my own head away, and then I start pommeling my legs through. Now our center lines are aligned, and I can start playing guard and sitting up on her. Okay. So again, best case scenario when you're in sort of a worst case scenario situation, there on your back, but that's how it would look to escape cleanly, back into guard, or sometimes it'll be some manifestation of half guard. Let's switch perspectives again, and let's just review how this is going to interact with the offensive players' options and what they're going to be considering. So now, if I'm here on M's back, and I've got the seatbelt, I've got the head trap, I've got the hook, she gets defensive grip in place, she bends the right leg and puts the left leg straight, and she starts moving to the floor. You'll see right here, it's very important that I try to win this battle for the head trap. If I move my head away even a little bit, very easy for her to get her head down to the ground. Okay? So that's going to be my first thing. Now, if M successfully gets her head free and starts freeing herself from the hooks here, she starts stepping out to the side, moving her back to the ground, inside elbow touches the floor. Now I start making my way on top. Now, as I go up on top here, I would love it if I could clear her elbow knee frame out of the way. But as I go on top here, she can use her left foot to capture my right leg. And now she's got me in some form of half guard. Her elbow can swim under my elbow. She takes an underhook, and now she's ready to start attacking me in different kinds of ways. Okay. So again, we're on the back. Here's the seatbelt grip. There's her grip. We start going towards the floor. She starts freeing herself from the head trap. Her legs get free, elbow down to the floor. I start going on top. And now, instead of going into the half guard, I know about that. I'm not gonna stick my leg into the half guard. I just try to maintain the top position by going to my knees. So Emmy's gonna move her head away, realign her center line with mine, and pommel her legs in. And now she's ready to start playing guard or do something from a stronger starting point. Okay. Now, the position we just left off in is in some way, it's a form of open guard, or it could be more specifically a form of butterfly guard, depending on exactly how I'm stationed, whether I'm on my knees or on my feet, and depending on whether or not she sits up, and some of the variables inside of that. One of the questions that had come up was about this specific position in a guard pass that was in a video that I put up. So I'm just going to go over that now. Since it sort of links back into this same topic. So the question that had come up, if you're playing guard here, was about a guard pass that looked more or less something like this, where I'm working against somebody's butterfly guard, I'm on my knees, and a lot of times this is a great position for me to pass from if I'm comfortable working to underhooks and things like this. But often it's a good idea to not accept that this is going to be our battleground, and instead to change the distance that I'm working at. So I might take a pair of bullfighter grips here, and then instead of just going straight away into a butterfly guard, I might go back and away and start to work from this longer distance here. Because she now has to respond to my change in stance before she can just start attacking me freely. Okay, and this is a really good way to get yourself a little bit ahead of the other person before, and then continue with the guard pass, and you know they have to catch up to you. So I've got my grip here, and I can start walking around to the side. I put my knee down to the floor, I put my shoulder on her knee, and I slide down to her hip. Okay, now at this point, I can start to pin her down to the mat. I can start to bring my left knee in between and start to develop my guard pass. So just hold it. So here we are. We've gotten into a position like this, and I have my knee in between, and I have a collar grip here. Now from this kind of position, I might be interested in going around to controlling her head, and she would be trying to block my bicep. Now we're lined up at the center line, so I know that while I go to control her head, I need to walk around into a side control type position where I can gain control of her head and get my center line across hers. Okay. So the big ideas on this particular guard pass are to go from the initial guard where she's playing butterfly and I'm on my knees, and changing that dynamic. So I'm passing at a longer range than she's wanting to play from. Once I've started that kind of guard pass, it's a standard sort of flank position, knee weave position, and we develop the guard pass as we'll see later on. So one more time, we're here. She's playing butterfly guard. The standard way of operating for me would be something like trying for underhooks or weaving the legs from this kind of position, or generally operating from this kneeling, 2 knees on the ground position. But instead of working from there, I can take 2 grips on her here, on her pant legs, and move back and away. And now I'm working at this longer range outside position. I go out to the side, my knee comes down to the floor, I put my shoulder against her knee, and I pin her body down with my right shoulder. Now I pull her legs towards my knee, and I get a grip here on the lapel. I try to pull my own elbow to my hip and cover her knee while I do that. Now I look to control her head, and she's going to be blocking my bicep. That's no problem. I walk my center line around and get into a position where I can stay across her body, grip, and underhook for the finish. So this type of action where we started off in the back position, I work my escape, now I'm back in some form of guard. This would allow for my partner to then work her guard pass, take my back again, and we could cycle through and repeat this as just a sort of cyclical drill. And this is the kind of thing you'll want to do. You'll gain the most from in each practice, where you're both cycling through some major dominant position, you're both cycling through some defensive cycle where you're having to work your way out of a poor position and into a better one, and then you're working from a position where you're relatively neutral, something like guard. And if you can get comfortable with all of those different scenarios, you're working from advantage, from neutral, and from disadvantage. You're sort of capturing all of the major scenarios you're going to encounter, and that's important for all your stages of development. So let's look at this from, again, for starting in the back position. So let's say we have the same setup here, and we're just looking to review the escape from the back. I get my initial defensive grip, my thumb and first finger into the wrist. I go ahead and I cover that up. I bring everything close here. Now I want to make sure that while I'm working here, I keep my body curled forward like this, and would like to get her knees together and stretch me out into this kind of position here. Okay, so I want to essentially minimize the exposure of my stomach. So we go forward and down. I create that drive leg on the floor. I straighten out my left, and I push everything out to the side here. My head goes forward and around, and now I start to escape from that bottom hook, sometimes directly. More often, you'll have to bring the right foot into play, find their foot and push it off, and now we start fishing the legs through. We're going to reset a little bit, and we're going to start in this exact position so we can look at the leg positioning. Okay, so I've made it to this point here, and I've started to escape. Let's go back. Right. So her hook is still in place, my left leg is straight. I start moving it and pushing away. Where is it? That bottom hook. Now, when I go through, it's important I bring my knee through, and then my foot matches up to her foot, as opposed to something like this. It's not the worst thing in the world, but this lingering sort of hook here can be problematic as we go forward. So as soon as I'm done escaping from it, I block it out. Now if she tries to put that sort of lingering hook back in, it's not going to happen. Now I want to put my right foot where my left foot currently is. So my right foot fishes in and replaces my left. Now both of my feet are on the outside of her foot, and it's not going to be very easy for her to replace that bottom leg. Okay? Try to avoid this kind of foot position, which it looks very similar, but it's going to create problems for you getting out. So we tuck the heels into the butt, we replace the feet, and now I start moving my back down to the floor and looking for that inside elbow position to hit the ground. As she goes to recover the top position, my foot goes high, and I bring in the elbow knee frame. I move my head away, and we've recovered, and we're ready to go. One cue that you're going to hear me say over and over and over again is to get that foot higher than the knee. When you go to an elbow knee escape, if you start an elbow knee escape and your foot is lower than your knee, it's going to be super hard to fit your knee in to the crevice of the other person's hip. So we always want to bring the foot up high so that when I elbow knee escape, it drops straight into the position I'm looking for. Okay, so let's do that one more time here. Hooks come in, seatbelt comes in, we get our grip, and we start going down to the floor. I've got my left leg straightening out, my right foot pushing on the ground, head forward and around. We get rid of that bottom hook. Where is it? There it is. And we start bringing the legs through and blocking out their legs. My elbow goes down. I feel her positioning changing to top. I bring my foot up high. And now my knee can fit right into the crevice of the hip. If we were in the same position but my foot was lower than my knee, as M persisted in the pin, it's going to be really frustrating trying to fit my leg in. But if my foot goes up high, when she persists with the pin, it's easy to fit the leg in. Now I move my whole body so that we're center line to center line. I'm expecting that she wants usually something like an underhook on the far side or a grip here on my lapel. On the near side, if she could, she would probably be trying to control my head. But as I've already moved that away, she's likely going to be grabbing down here at my pant leg and trying to begin a new sort of series of guard passes. So now my left foot will pommel in, and I'll reestablish. I've got both of my legs between us. I've got our center lines lined up again, and so I know I'm done escaping, and I'm now done establishing the beginnings of my defensive guard. If I add in a grip and a second grip, now I'm starting to build up an offensive guard. I can start bringing her forward and off balance, sitting up and attacking from here. Okay, and so that will be sort of a segue into, again, into sort of playing guard as opposed to just escaping from a position. Main idea so far is when you're going to escape from the back position, we want to focus on establishing the hands, but not doing the majority of the work with the hands. They just set in place to prevent things from getting worse. Then we use the legs to actually do the escaping. One leg driving off the ground, creating direction. The other leg straightening out so that it's a nice smooth escape from the hooks. Then as we start escaping from the back position, we develop that elbow knee frame. Once the elbow knee frame is in place, you are essentially out of the back position and a new battle has been established. It's a battle for guard position. Am I going to recover guard? Am I going to recover half guard? Or am I going to end up on the bottom of a pin having lost the battle for guard position? Once you win that battle, now you're playing guard and we can, it's sort of a new frontier that we can study. Okay, so let's look at this one more time. Again, the defensive positionings, I'll try and point out when we go from I'm defending the back, I'm still potentially in danger, got to be very careful, to I'm out of danger with regards to the back, and now I'm in this new territory of fighting for guard position and what to sort of expect there. Over here. Okay, so first things first, obviously she's on my back, obviously she wants to get a strangle or some sort of submission here, so we stave that off. We bend one leg, we straighten out the other, and we start driving everything down to the straightened side. My head goes forward and around, and now I've released the head trap. I need to release that bottom hook, so we bring left leg towards right, and we start searching for that hook, pushing it off, and then stepping through and around. Now my inside elbow goes to the ground, and let me pause right here. At this moment, I've escaped from the back position, and we are starting a new battle for how is this going to resolve? Is it going to resolve with her in side control, with me having her in the half guard, or with me fully escaping to guard? Okay, and a lot of that comes down to, can I establish the elbow knee frame? I've got half of it, I've got the elbow down to the floor, I need the other half. That's going to be my foot going up high and my knee being lower than my foot. So that as M tries to gain the top position here, go ahead, I can move myself away and my elbow knee frame fits cleanly into the crevice of the hip. Okay, now I've established a frame. So she's not going to have the side control on me. It's going to be some form of guard, most likely. Okay, I move my head away, and now I've actually got some options. I can decide on one form of guard or another. I'm going to pommel my leg in, line my body up, and now I've got some form of butterfly guard, and I can sit up on my partner. Once we're in this position, let's just look at a few of the things that have changed now. Now my legs are between the two of us, and now our center lines are lined up. Okay, I can do a whole bunch of things from here, and she can do a whole bunch of things. We're in a relatively neutral position, whereas obviously a few moments ago I was in quite a bit of danger. Okay, so just one more time, let's go from this perspective here. And we'll just scoot back. So here's the same scenario. One leg bends, other leg goes straight, and we go down to the floor. My head goes forward and around. Straight leg moves towards bent leg. I start pushing off, where is it? That bottom hook, and stepping through and around. My inside elbow goes down towards the floor. My foot goes higher than my knee so I can get into an elbow knee frame. I move my head away. We realign our bodies here. And now we get our 2 grips and we start to sit up. I just spin right around and we can cycle through this again. My defensive grip, one leg bent, one leg straight, everything down towards the floor. Head goes forward and around, left leg straightens, and now I'm searching for that top hook, that bottom hook rather, it's really up high. I fish my legs out, elbow goes down, foot goes high, and I create the elbow knee frame. I move my head away, now we're lined up at the center line, palm of the legs in, sit up on my partner, and we're ready to go. Seatbelt grip comes in, defensive grip comes in, everything down to the floor, head trap escape, legs start to escape, inside elbow touches the mat. I start going on top, I end up landing on the elbow knee frame, she moves her head away from me, and I can feel that the foot is a little bit lower than the knee. So I take my hand here and I start pushing her leg out of the way to try and create a pin. Okay. We want to get that foot up super high here so that it can connect here. Yes, now we'll keep it a little bit higher. Now with my weight on her, if I try to push this leg out of the way, it's not going anywhere. She moves her head away from me. Keep on, keep on, keep on. Keep on.
I can't keep my elbow with my knee.
Oh, sorry. This is good. So Em was saying she couldn't keep her elbow with her knee. It's totally fine. When we get into this position and I land on the elbow knee frame, the knee starts to replace the elbow. Mm-hmm. So I landed first on elbow, then on her knee, and once that happened, she's free to move her head away. This is great. This is exactly the kind of thing that can I resit up?
Beginner question.
I will often neglect to mention, but we want to think of it as you have certain. There's a limited set of tools that you have when you're in a bad position, almost by definition. She worked her way into a position where she had an elbow that she could use as a frame, and that could hold up some significant amount of my body weight. When you combine that with a knee, you can hold up your body weight and the other person's body weight, and probably a good bit more than that. But once that's been established, she no longer has to have the elbow knee connected for the entire time she's working. She wants to use that to accomplish something specific, and that's to get her head away from mine. So she can go from a position where she has an elbow knee frame to moving her head away, and that's fine to have the elbow knee separate. What's not fine is your head isn't moved away yet, and you push with the elbow knee frame while your head is still close. Okay, and as long as my head is moving away freely, then I'm fine. Sort of overly simplistic way to capture this is to say the battle in jiu-jitsu is always who's controlling the other person's spine. Okay, from your skull all the way down to the bottom of your spine. Who's determining where your spine is and where their spine is. If I'm on Emmy's back here, can I read it? Right now, she determines where we go, but I'm going to go with her. So I'm going to be able to keep my spine very close to hers. I have my seatbelt grip and everything's looking good. Now, as the escape develops, she separates from me so that her spine and my spine are not moving dependently on with each other. Okay? And once that happens, she wants to do things that increase her ability to move her spine freely. Okay, so let's pick a little bit. Here's my grip. She starts making her way through the escape. And right there is a big moment of separation from her head and my head, the top of the spine. She starts freeing herself from my hooks. And now the bottom of the spine, the pelvis, is starting to be free from me. She moves her elbow down to the floor. I start going on top, and I land on an elbow knee frame. Now there's actually distance between my sternum and her spine, and so she's made even more progress. Now, she wants to move her spine or her head away from me. She wants to move the top of her spine away, and now her legs come in, and the legs maintain that separation. It's what keeps me from just getting right back to where I was a moment ago. Okay, so this idea is she started with me on her back. I was controlling the distance between our two spines. As she makes progress through the escape, she's able to separate her spine from mine. And as she gets back into guard position, she's able to prioritize moving her head away from me so that she doesn't have to have her elbow where it was a moment ago. And now the elbow and the hands are free to go on the attack. Let's look at a related situation here where, let's say I've got, let's see, side control me, and I've got something like an elbow knee frame here. Okay, but let's say M has control of my head like this. Okay, so she's got something like a cross face with her left arm, and she's using that to keep my head close to hers here. If I were going to use the elbow knee frame to try and move away, that would be great. Then I would want to pommel inside of her arm here. Okay, so now my right hand is a paw grip against her left. Okay, so I went from an elbow knee frame, and I used that to create some separation. Then I pommel in so that I remove the tool she was using to keep herself attached to me. Then I can place my left leg in, and that helps me even more to separate from her. And then I can get my grips and go on the attack. If I had to keep the elbow knee frame the whole time, there would never be an opportunity for me to use my grip to do something else. Lift, grab, pull, push, all these different things. Okay, so in a side control position, if I have an elbow knee frame like this, I use it to move my head away. Then I can pommel in my leg, and now these are starting to help me replace the elbow knee frame with just my legs, and I can freely start to escape, sit up, and go on the attack. Okay. So let me just check that one. See if we had a question here. Oh, okay. All right. So I want to look at one more piece of this. Just when you're escaping from the back position and the person actually has a hold of your lapel, just to reinforce some of the ideas we've been going over up to this point. So we saw that when we're in a position like this, that if she has just a seatbelt grip, we want to go left and right here. This is a great way for me to start off. If she happens to have a hold of my lapel here, okay, this is going to change my grip slightly. Okay, first of all, it's up higher. It's hard to get my thumb inside of her thumb here. And once she has this grip, what she's really looking to do is to pull her elbow behind my shoulder like this. Okay, so in a defensive position here, when somebody does have a lapel, what you want to do is you want to do things that bring their elbow further forward on you like this. Okay, again, I'm not really going to escape from this position by just pulling on her arm and resisting, but this will stave off further progress. It's going to make it so I don't go from collar grip to just being submitted completely. Okay, so we grip here and up at the elbow, and I pull things forward. I don't try to pull it over my head like this. Okay, I pull everything forward and I crunch forward. And now the escape is more or less the same. Right leg bends, left leg straightens out, everything goes down to the floor, and I escape my head. I free myself from the bottom hook, inside elbow down to the ground, she goes up on top, haha, elbow knee frame in place, haha, I'm out of here, haha, look who's having the last laugh. Probably her. Okay. But again, I want you to have in mind that in a defensive position, someone's on my back, it's not realistic to think that your hands by themselves are going to get you out of the position. If that did happen, that would generally be a mistake on her part. Instead, my hands make it so things just don't get worse and worse and worse and worse, and then the actual escape can take place. Usually it will be, usually it will be something involving the legs. Driving towards the floor, escaping the bottom hook, so forth and so on. Okay, so let's look at that one more time, just because seatbelt grip, oftentimes it's going to become a collar grip, and you don't want to be reaching up to try and establish that initial defensive grip. When they have your collar, things do change a little bit. We have to keep that elbow in front. Okay, so here we are. And seatbelt grip came in. I wanted to get defensive grip, but I maybe was late to the party, and she gets that thumb inside my collar. And now I know that it's not realistic or good for me to try and bring my thumb up above hers. Instead, we bring her elbow forward so she can't do the next thing she needs to do, which is to pull that elbow behind my shoulder blade. Okay? Let's say if you have your head drop in place. Everything else is in place on her end. I'm keeping her elbow in front of my shoulder. My right leg bends, my left leg straightens, and I go forward and down to the mat. I bring myself free from the head trap, and I start to free myself from her hooks. I step outside of her legs, fish my legs in, my elbow goes down to the floor, my foot always higher than my knee so that I can create that frame. Now I move my head away, pommel my legs in, and we're ready to go back and on the attack. Switch faces. So, seatbelt grip, don't just ahead. Seatbelt grip, I get my thumb into her lapel. She takes 2 grips on my sleeve, 1 and 2, and we'll go this way with the left hand. There we go. And now she pulls my elbow forward, resisting my ability to, that's pretty good, resisting my ability to pull my elbow behind the shoulder. Now from this position, she brings that right leg bent, left leg straight, pushes things down to the floor, head trap goes free, bottom hook goes free, and she starts to go elbow down to the floor after she escapes from the hook. Now I try to go on top, elbow knee frame in place, and now that I've landed on the elbow knee frame, she can freely move her head away, pommel legs in, and let's see if she remembers. Can we go to spider guard? Pressure's on, pressure's on. We don't script this portion at all, so I just put the pressure on him. So here's her spider guard. She does a couple repetitions going side to side here. Very good. Good. Whoa. Okay, she wants to get it. She's done. She's just like totally throwing me into the computer right now. So we switch a couple more times. Good. And you'll see that in this position here, I'm just trying to turn her palms up and pull her elbows down to the ground. And then as she switches from side to side, she's got a straightened leg, and her head is always moving towards the side of the straightened leg. So she does another repetition here, and one more here. And then the last note on this is, as she does her switching here, she's always trying to get that heel higher than the toes. Okay, if she does toes higher than the heel, this is easy for me to pommel free from. So she's always going to be bringing her heel up higher than her toes, and you'll see that really pulls my elbow away from my hip and pulls my arm into a very poor position. So she's got that straightened leg, her head moves towards it, palms are turning up, elbows down to the floor, and she's got her heel up high. And now there's a lot of good tension on her end that's controlling this position. She maybe does a switch again, here, and then one more. All right, and a switch. So now M's on my back here. Instead of just a seatbelt grip, she's gone even further. She's got a hold of my lapel. I get a hold of her sleeve, and I bring her elbow in front of my shoulder here. I bend one leg, straighten out the other, everything down to the floor. My head goes forward and around to escape from the head trap, and I start working my way free from that bottom hook. I've got hunter foot down and extract my 2 legs. She starts going up on top, my inside elbow down, my foot higher than my knee, so that I can fit that frame in. I move myself into as close to parallel as I can get, and then I fish my legs in between. If she starts grabbing a hold of my pant legs here and standing up on me, yep, and now I can start to work my spider guard here. Grips on the sleeves, turning the palms up, and elbows down to the floor. My heel goes higher than my toes whenever possible, and we can start to work our way through the spider guard position here. One thing I had in my notes here was that there were some requests for things to do if let's say you're watching this, you want to be working alongside, but you don't have a partner. What are some things you can do? And one thing I'll look to incorporate as we go forward is to really separate out. Okay, here's what it would look like solo, and here's maybe a drill you can do if you're just working by yourself. Here's sort of the technical instruction as to what I'm doing, what my partner's doing, and what essentially would be, a description of us sparring or working live. And then sort of the idea we looked at before, which is partner checks. I'm doing something, my partner's doing something, and we are just looking to see if we're on the right track. How do we know if things are working out well? It might be something like, can you hold their body weight up? Can they break your grip? Things like this. So sort of solo, technical instruction, and then partner checks. The basic one for this lesson today is just creating the elbow knee frame and the elbow knee escape. And there's a whole bunch of variations on this, but I'll just demonstrate one that is applicable to today. So I'll actually do this drill solo. So there's a bunch of ways you can you will learn to do hip escapes or elbow knee escapes. Some of them involve both legs starting bent. Some of them involve one leg bent and the other leg starting straight. There's reasons for each of those. What I want you to focus on first is just pulling your 2 heels into your butt and lifting your butt off the ground. And then from here I'm going to make a turn onto my side. One foot will go up high and I'll join my elbow and knee together. Okay, now I put that same foot on the floor and I use it to lift my hip up, and in one turn I go from right hip to left hip and I bring my elbow and knee together with my foot up high. Okay, I don't want to go foot to the ground, lift, and then set my hip down and drag on the floor. Okay, I want to be able to pivot from one hip to the other while keeping my tailbone off the ground. Okay, that's a sort of specific elbow knee escape for this scenario today. So it would be from this position here, I pull my heels into my butt, I lift everything off the floor. My foot goes higher than my knee, and I go onto my side so I can create an elbow knee frame. I put that foot down to the ground, and now I lift. My hip is off the ground, off the ground, off the ground. My tailbone completely off the ground here. Turning, 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 turning. Elbow knee frame on the other side. Foot goes to the ground. Hip stays up off the ground, up off the ground, up off the ground. You can see there's a big gap between. And we go to the other side. You'll notice I'm not moving all that much up and down the mat. So this stands in contrast to the sort of standard hip escape that people may do up and down the floor, and sort of, you know, you can sort of zone out on that a little bit and it's not really all that useful. This particular hip escape, you move up and down vertically and onto your side, but you don't really move across the mat horizontally. Okay, so one more time, it would be particular type of hip escape. I bring my hip up off the floor, I keep it up off the floor, and I go elbow and knee together on one side. I put that foot to the ground. Now that foot is on the ground, I keep my body up in the air, and I just practice turning onto my other side and lifting my foot up high. My foot goes to the ground, and we can continue the drill. Okay. One thing to also notice here is whenever you're doing a turning motion, the piece that's going to accelerate your progress the most is to let your eyes turn freely. Okay, so if I'm trying to look at all of you guys out here while I do the movement, it's going to be impossible for me to do it correctly when we go to this side. That's pretty obvious, but I'm just going to demonstrate it so you know what I'm talking about. We go here and I lift. Here comes that elbow knee frame. Everything's okay so far. If I keep looking this way and I try to do the elbow knee escape on the other side, it's not gonna work. Obviously, because when my eyes turn one way and I want my hip to turn the other way, my spine is essentially going to be twisting in opposite directions, and that is no good. That is essentially what your opponent wants to do to you when they cross face you, when they pull your legs the other way, trying to twist your spine up. So what I want to do instead is to let my eyes turn first and to beat the rest of my body. Okay, so from this perspective here, if I do my elbow knee escape, I'm just going to look at the floor like something just fell out of my ear, like this. Okay, here. So I do my elbow knee escape here, and it turns my whole spine by starting at the top of my spine. I put this foot to the ground, and I make my movement so that my eyes turn to the floor first, and then the rest of the movement is relatively easy. My foot goes down to the ground, and I let my eyes turn down to the floor. Okay. And this is going to be applicable not just in an elbow knee escape, but in playing guard in general. If you give this a test, you have somebody pass your guard to one side and only pass to that side, and you just look at the floor on that side, very, very hard for them to make progress. Okay, hopefully that pans out right now. When I ask Emmy to join me in demonstrating this, she might totally crush my guard and destroy all my credibility, but well, you know, I'm willing to wager that. So let's say that experimental scenario, go ahead and start passing my guard to this side here whenever you're ready. Go ahead. Anytime. Go ahead, keep going. Keep going. Keep trying to pass this way. Yeah. Yeah. She's making confused noises at me right now, and that's actually means I'm on the right track. So, you know, surprise, surprise, I did set up this whole experiment in my favor. But what essentially happens is when I look at the floor, she will feel like, oh, wait, I started passing guard, but something else needs to happen. And, you know, this can be expressed different ways. She might start going to her right, my left. So maybe we're here initially. She was passing to this side, my right, her left. She starts coming this way. I look at the floor, so easy for me to stave off that attack. The downside, of course, is that the other side is exposed. So as she goes to that side, now my guard is easily passed. Okay, but I can organize my response to that in just the same way by looking at the floor on the other side. Okay, so here we are. She starts passing to one side. I look at the floor. She goes to the other side. I look at the floor, and now we're lined up again. But what tends to throw people off from the guard player's perspective is they just look at the other person. So instead of making their eyes look at the floor, they're sort of caught in between. They're looking somewhere over in this land. So maybe I don't have my grips, my hooks completely came off. She starts passing my guard, and I'm defending here. She can make progress in this direction, no good for me, or the other direction. And that's almost impossible to deal with when you have to defend two routes at the same time. Instead, she starts passing my guard to this side. I totally close off that avenue. I look at the floor, my elbow and knee frame is in place. There's no guard pass in this direction. She might try to spin past my head. She might go to her right. Those are all fine. But I've defended this side completely. Now she goes to the other side. I defend that side completely by looking at the floor. And now that we're realigned here, I can be more effective in my defensive guard. Okay, so started with the idea of a hip escape sort of as you could think of as a solo drill or a variation of a hip escape that you can do as a solo drill, and then progressing that a little bit more specifically into looking at the floor so that you turn the top of your spine, and that will turn the rest of your spine. And in an elbow knee escape, in a hip escape, elbow knee escape, turning your body freely is very, very important. Then we sort of went into a different territory, playing guard and passing guard, and saw how eyes turning to the floor freely is going to make it much easier for me to defend my guard and close off one avenue of attack. Of course, this opens up the other avenue, but by turning my eyes freely, I can defend that avenue as well. Now, this doesn't just apply to playing guard, it also applies to passing guard. So if I can come over here playing guard, let's say I'm in a position like we had before where I was doing against her butterfly guard. I was backing out and going into something like a bullfighter pass and trying to put pressure on her with that guard pass. I took this way. Yeah. So I go back and away. I start going around the corner and I look to put my knee down on the floor and use my shoulder. If I'm looking here, almost over her shoulder, about 45 degrees, I end up driving on an upwards diagonal. And what's going to happen is I'm going to land on her elbow and knee frame on this side. Okay, so even though I try to drive her down to the floor, even though I seem like I'm ahead on the guard pass, I end up just landing on this elbow knee frame. Okay, instead of that, if I let my eyes turn all the way to my 6 o'clock, I'm going to end up turning my body and twisting, and that's going to make it much easier for me to separate her elbow knee frame. So I go back and away, I start guarding around the corner, here comes the shoulder down, and I look towards 6 o'clock. Now when I start driving down to the floor, it's much easier for me to bring things into a position where I can start to go on the attack and separating her defense, her elbow and knee and things like this. Okay. So we'll revisit that idea as we go towards guard passing and as we go into playing guard more and more. But just to start off, when you're thinking about solo drills and you're trying to incorporate movements by yourself and you want to have a way of testing out, am I doing it right, or what should I be really aiming for when I do a solo drill, main thing is let your eyes turn freely, okay? Because it's hard to come upon that cue unless somebody just tells you directly, because you're probably focusing on legs and hips, but if you turn your eyes freely, the rest of your body tends to organize. And so that would be my recommendation as a drill for you to do in a solo setting when you're looking to practice these types of movements. So to recap, we sort of look to complete a little bit of the picture today by doing some of the defensive work from the back position. And we looked at what to do against a seatbelt grip. We looked at what to do when somebody has a lapel grip. Okay, in both scenarios, we were basically just using our grip to make sure things didn't get worse and worse and worse. And then the actual escape came from the legs. One leg created direction, and one leg looked to create sort of a smooth transition away from their bottom hook. As we went to the floor, we released the head trap, brought that inside elbow into position, down to the floor, and then we got into an elbow knee frame. From the elbow knee frame, we sort of transitioned away from the escape itself into the beginnings of guard recovery and playing guard. And so we'll pick up in that territory the next time we visit this. And that from the first lesson up to this point, this gives us a general idea of what's going on from the back position. And to put this in a greater, sort of larger context, as we go into playing guard and passing guard, one of the things that's going to come up over and over again is this assumption that if you're passing someone's guard or you're playing guard, if you get to someone's back, it's essentially over. And we sort of make that assumption that if all of your work, all of your submission attempts, all of your sweeps, all these different things from guard, if they all lead to you getting to the person's back, you need to treat that as a win. And that assumes a lot. That assumes that you know how to break someone's defenses down. That assumes you know how to apply a strangle successfully once you've gotten through their defenses. And that, of course, isn't always the case when you're first starting off. So we sort of, this whole series began with that in mind, with an idea of where are we going to end up if things go right, and what do we do when we end up there. We end up on someone's back, we want to have a very, very high level of confidence that we're going to get a submission, or at least they're not going to escape from the back, and we can repeatedly attempt various submissions. And that's going to sort of free up that study so that when we look at guard and we look at playing guard, we can really dive in and look at the different dynamics at play, with the assumption that if any of these happen to lead towards the back, you know what to do, and you're confident in addressing the defenses that you'll run into. Okay.
Okay, wait, I might have to demonstrate this. Okay, hi.
Hello, by the way.
Okay. Scully, it's wants to do the voices. So from this guard position here, so what I'm running into is it's not like I bullfighter, but I'm finding that my sleeves are like getting grabbed, and then they're pulling to this guard that's like the double inside hook. It's like two inside hooks, and I feel like I'm bouncing on their knees, but they're just tracking my leg. So it's like when I go to stand to pass, they're just adjusting and they're tracking here and doing this kind of thing.
Okay, so let's run through the question just a couple of times, because I'm sure as you're experiencing, it's like the position changes or can change pretty rapidly, and being able to sort of move in tempo with that is going to be important. So I'll try and mirror that here with them, and you let me know if we're on the right track, if I'm missing something. So you're saying you're the guard passer, and so you're in my position here, and let's say M gets my sleeves, correct? And you're passing from here, and as a result of that, you're running into their hooks in some way. Is that about right so far?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say I'm standing up here, and she starts to lean back just a hair bit and put the foot into my arms like this, and they're sort of staying seated but playing from this kind of positioning. Is that about right?
Yeah, and usually like both of their feet, it's like on the inside of the knees. It's like a weird
Oh, like this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And
yeah, what is that?
Yeah, so this is not the worst thing in the world. So what's happening here is, let's come back, is the first thing is when I put my my grips on and I go to the outside position, I want to make sure that I don't stand up directly in front of the person, or worse, standing up towards them like this. Obviously, this is going to make it very easy to get those hooks. Okay. What I want to do is I want to roll my weight into my knuckles, almost like I was going to do push-ups on my knuckles here, where I'd bear my weight down on the knuckles. I want to do that same thing so that I can project myself away from them like this. Okay. So that at minimum, for M to get her hooks into my legs, she would have to start straightening out her legs. Okay. So I don't want to do this, where her legs can be somewhat bent when she hooks in. Okay. It's still not that bad if it happens, but it's not ideal. If I go back and away, and now she tries to reach for my leg with hers, she might make it. There's going to be people that are extremely tall relative to you, and maybe they can make it. Okay, but when that happens, when they go to straighten out the leg here, it's much easier to just spin their whole body by. Okay, the big idea right there is somebody straightening out their leg when it's not actually in contact with you is making one long lever out of the leg that you can move. Okay, so contrast that, let's say regular spider right here. Okay, so we're in a position like this. She's got a straightened leg. This is a problem for me because her grip and her hook are in place. And so for me to just manipulate her leg here is not very realistic. She lets go of the grip though, and it's easy to just punch the whole leg by. So when somebody straightens out the leg and they have nothing to keep it attached to you with, this is no good for them. Okay, and that's why we normally see this sort of spider guard grip. Okay? So by the same token, if we're here and I go back and away, and she still reaches with one of the legs, that straightened leg is very, very compromising for her, and I can go back to the side. So my first recommendation would be try to move yourself back and away from the person instead of just vertically up. Probably what's happening is you're going vertically up and the legs are hooking in. Right? Try going back and away first. What's probably going to happen is they're going to pull on your sleeves and sort of try and disrupt your positioning by bringing your elbow forward. So if I'm here with them, and same scenario, I start going back and away, watch my arms here. If I go like this, now M starts pulling on my sleeves here and she draws me forward. So now I've effectively not stepped back and away because of where my leg positioning is now. What I want to do is turn the biceps out and try to keep my elbow pointed at my hip as I go away and never pointed out to the side like this. So I point my elbows at my hip. Now when I go back and away, if she pulls on my sleeve, nothing happens. Okay? And then I would just try to take a step to the outside and then get to an angle where I've got her center line beat with two of my feet. So I'm on one side of the center line or the other. And now it's easy to start doing our footwork and moving around the corner and beating the person's guard position. Does that start to get at what you're running into?
Yes. And I'm also running into like, it's almost like what mink does, where it's like their top leg comes in. It's like that butterfly hook, but I feel like it's like extra bouncy, like how mink does, like from half guard.
Is it in your legs or it's over your arm?
I feel like their knees like on my shoulder, but I'm not able to like rotate it in a beneficial way.
So you're sort of in a, if you're lying down right about here, you're sort of in a position like, is it here? Yeah. And maybe this leg is hooking in a half guard or something like this. Yeah. Okay. So that position, I'm trying to think about how it would emerge from what we were just talking about. There's a few ways that can happen. Let's say, if we come back in, if M has my sleeves here and I go back and away, and she does pull on my sleeves, and I end up coming down to try and collect my balance, and then we end up threaded into this type of positioning here, where she's essentially saying, I'll play guard, that's fine. I'm gonna go onto my back, that's fine. I'm gonna try and draw you in, and the trade-off is they're more limited in the ways they can move, their ability to sit up and things like this. But the upside for them is I'm much more captured in her grips and her legs. It's harder for me to just back up like I did initially. I essentially have to contend with this guard position now. Whereas before, I was so far outside of her grips and legs that my footwork was going to keep me relatively free. Okay, so when this happens and you land on this knee here, the first thing you want to try and do, let's say you have your initial grips here, is to try and get them so that their knees are pointing opposite of where they're facing. Most people, most of the time, play guard on their right side. Okay, so what tends to happen is people will go like this and they'll just, as you were saying, sort of bounce off of this knee and they feel like they're sort of constantly deflected from here. Instead, what I want to do is take her bottom leg to her top leg like this. Okay, so I just start moving everything to my right because she's facing to her right. And if she allows that to happen, it's much easier for me to just walk her, my legs free, and pass her guard completely. Now that's assuming quite a bit. You know, I've sort of landed in her guard and it's just one course of action I can take. I know she's facing one way, so I try to move things in the opposite way. But of course, what's likely going to happen is either she's going to accept that and turn the direction I'm moving things, right, and sort of play guard on her left side. Pretty uncommon. I'm sure you've seen, like, even if people know they should be playing guard on this side, they will resist doing it because they're just not as good at playing guard on that side. And the other option is they'll try to resist you from initially lifting up that knee, and that's going to give other opportunities. So it might end up looking like this. We're here. I know she wants to be on her right side. I know she wants things going in this direction. I start trying to pick up on her bottom leg. She knows that, so she doubles down. She threads her leg a little further through and stays on her side here. Okay, now I have the opportunity to actually do things like a leg weave, which is probably what you were looking for initially, but you were here, no leg weave, versus here, easy leg weave. This leg weave every time. This, never, ever, ever, ever. Okay, but the problem is, how do I get this knee down? It's never going to happen up here. It's always going to happen by taking this bottom leg and threatening them in this direction here. So I threaten in this direction. She goes, oh, I don't like that. I don't want to play guard on my left. I'll go to this right side. Okay, now I've got an actual leg weave I can start working with here. Okay. You know this in the sense of you felt what it's like when you try to pass one side or the other, they resist, and now there's an opportunity on one side or the other. It's much harder to lay out all of those details in this context versus when you're going live, you just feel the resistance to your progress. They're resisting me here, so I try to go to the other side. They resist me on that side, so we come back around. What you actually end up seeing is something that just looks like this. What it usually looks like is just this. Right? But what actually happened, I went to one side, she responded, I brought everything down and leg weaved. And so descriptively, maybe this is all we talk about. Leg weave. But in reality, it's I move to my right, she responds to me, then I go back to my left, and now I have the leg weave path. Right? So what you'll experience is you try to go to one side, you feel the slightest inkling of resistance, and you just punch back into the leg weave that I'm assuming you were looking for initially. The last bit on that is, especially with the person you were just talking about, who we've all sparred with plenty of times and had a great time sparring with, is there's going to be a moment when their top leg goes into a position like this. Let's turn the camera. Where you'll see M generally wants to have this sort of alignment where her foot and knee are relatively the same height with her top leg. But if she's really trying to deflect me with her knee and capture me with her foot, the foot sometimes starts going like this and getting really high relative to the knee. This is excellent for me as a guard passer, very compromising for M to do this. Okay, so it might look like this. We're here, I start making my way to my right, we start bringing things back, and now I'm starting the leg weave here. I start bringing things down, but I'm not able to punch through on this side. I feel like I'm caught up in the legs. But if I can bring everything down and I feel her foot going up high at all to capture me, I can start walking around her legs and going to my right side to pass. So that as her legs go like this more and more, I would go around to this side. If this changes here, then I would keep the leg weave as I originally had it and go to my left. Okay, it's something you're gonna feel on your lat and on the back of your shoulder. You're gonna feel their foot continuing to go up, but their knee going down. In that case, it's easy to keep the leg weave and just walk to your right. Okay, so that would be the last thing I would look for. Anyone that likes to use that shoelace hook to capture you is gonna have a tendency to get collapsed in that position. Okay, so that'd be the last piece of advice there. Did you have other questions? Or other ones you want to bring up now?
I think that solved a lot of issues.
Okay. And then I really briefly touched on it today, but you had your question about the guard pass from the video.
So
I wasn't sure if there was something.
I am getting into like that leg weave position, but I like have this vague memory, and I think I watched one of your YouTube videos where you weave, so you're like doing something like a leg weave, and they're putting their leg up high, so you weave your own knee back in, and then go to the mount.
Oh yeah,
that one.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm forcing the leg weave a lot, and I'm getting caught, but really I just need to switch direction to the mount and like get my knee back in there behind their legs.
Yeah. So I'll touch on this sort of more just as a general concept than that specific guard pass, because the thing with that guard pass was I was responding to a butterfly guard by going back and away. So that's one item. And then it was essentially a bullfighter pass using the shoulder. And that's another item. And then it sort of gets into what you're talking about, which is using the what might be called the leg drag position, or the knee weave position, or the flank position. Sort of this use of the collar at the upper body, and then something downstairs, one of my knees or leg weave grip, to keep their knees together. So that's another item. So we got 3 so far. And then the last one was, how do we resolve the guard pass itself? How do we go from leg weave, knee weave, etc., to the pin, the side control, the mount, things like this. And so it's these last two items that you're sort of asking about, the leg drag position or the knee weave position, and the corresponding mount position or side control and things like this. There's a lot that can be involved in all of those things. I'll just give a couple key ideas here. So in general, if you're passing someone's guard like this and their knees are together, it's best to keep them together. It's also best if I have their knees on one side of our center lines, if I can keep them that way. So that's what's going on here. As opposed to this, where all that's really changed is one of her knees has moved to the other side of my center line. Let's actually turn a little bit. So now this knee is on this side of my center line. Whereas before, this was the case, and her knees are on one side of my center line, and that's great for me. All that's happening when you do mount, side control, leg weave, leg drag, is you're essentially allowing yourself to use different tools to make this configuration happen. So if I were to replace my left knee with my right, I'm keeping her two knees together, I'm keeping them on one side of my body. Awesome. This would be the way that you would go into the mount position from here. Okay. But the mount position is really just a sort of a byproduct of this more important idea of having the two knees on one side of the body. Same thing with the leg weave. I put the two knees together. Here's my leg weave. I keep the knees together. I start freeing myself from her legs, and now I might punch my knee back in between. So now I'm right where I was a moment ago. Okay, and I can try and separate her head and climb up to the mount. Okay. But what I would recommend is don't worry so much about, did I do a leg drag? Is it a knee weave, or should I go to mount or side control? What's most important is that I keep their knees together. I can use either one of my knees, and I can use my grips to do that. If possible, it'll usually start with your grip. You're moving, your grips start to get things going here, but your grip will rarely be enough to sustain the knees together. So I bring everything down. Now my right leg is going to climb, and it's now my right leg that's keeping hers together. Now my grip is free to go to the upper body. And I might go to the side control. If I can't separate her head from her knees, I might go to the side control in order to resolve the guard pass. But going to mount, going to side control, those are relatively easy, I would say. More important is, keep in mind, I want to keep their knees together. Starts with grip, then one of my legs takes over, then depending on how they respond, I might go to mount, I might go to side control. Did you have anything else then?
I think that's it. Unless I go on a tangent about something completely unrelated.
Try me. If it's too much, I'll let you know.
I'm also having trouble, I think, with De La Hiva countering. It sounds so stupid. I know I'm doing something really stupid and basic.
That's always the case. If you get a good answer,
just really strong at keeping it's the De La Hiva on one side and pushing on that same side with the hook. And I really suck at leg dragging, and I feel like I just have trouble when there's so much tension on my hips, loosening that up so I can pass again, if that makes sense.
So the person playing guard, can I stand up, is doing something like this.
Yeah.
Same as the hook, they're putting that foot on the hip, they're probably thinking they're all fancy and holding your belt, this kind of thing right here.
Yeah, very aggressively.
Yeah, it's the worst.
So fancy.
Okay, so let's actually come this way just a bit. And there's the initial hook here, there's the grip at the foot, there's the belt grip, and then there's this foot on the hip. Now the counterintuitive thing that you have to do is to move away from them first. Because this grip pulling, hanging weight off me, real strong pull, and this foot on my hip here, this will indefinitely keep me the forward pressure off of them. Okay? Because you know that if I pressure forward, I'm gonna get sat down to my hip, or I'm gonna get my back taken, or anything in this direction is gonna get spoiled by being sort of moved out to the side here. Okay? So what I need to do is I need to relieve the tension created by this foot and this grip, pulling on one end and pushing on the other. Going forward isn't gonna do that. The weaker piece of these two is the grip. So what I want to do is grab the leg and actually sit back in a way so that I can free the leg. And now I can collapse everything inward. Okay, it's very counterintuitive, and that's what sort of makes it effective. Is it breaks one of the first things about guard passing, which is forward pressure, turning pressure towards their head, and all of this is arranged to stop that. So we have to go back and away to put some slack into the grip and the foot on the hip. Then once that slack is in place, you can release the hook, you can kick off the de la Riva or something like this, and then you can go back to passing their guard. Right, but that would be the main thing that I would, because that's probably the most counterintuitive part of it. And once you get that settled, then the rest of it's fairly simple. Just to bear in mind, it's totally fine in these scenarios if they have the grip and they have the foot. It's totally fine to put a hand on the floor or put a knee on the floor. But what you want to make sure of is you're able to keep realigning with them. So I wouldn't do this and stop. You'll see that now M can freely spin underneath me. What I want to be able to do is put my hand and knee on the ground and then turn to face her like this. So I'm always able to pivot here. And now I can start to drag or get the foot off of me. Okay, so as I move back and away, maybe I move towards 4 o'clock or, about 6 o'clock or 4 or 5 o'clock, sort of back and away. I want to constantly face 12 o'clock. So I don't move away and look away, then they're going to spin underneath you. Instead I move away, but I look towards them so that I counter their rotation by following them. Okay. If there's other items, feel free to send them over to me. I'll try to incorporate them into the next time we do a lesson. But we'll leave it at that for today. I think that's a good set of questions. Good to see you, Em. Thanks for joining us. All of you in chat, whose name I won't say, good to see you as well. Have a good evening. Not bad idea. Not bad.
I don't know.
No. Go back.
To what?
Yeah. The only danger with this is if I start moving you side to side and you have nothing to base on the floor with. So it's not the worst thing. I would do a 1 and maybe 1 here. Yeah. If you were to grab up here or something like this, then you could do the same thing you just did with your elbow. That's a good idea.
So then I can save my space.
Yeah. But if my legs are in between us, like usually I'll want to try and control them somehow, either elbow or directly with your hand. Another one is you could just take 2 hands and grab my pants here. Yeah, and then if you were to stand up on me.
Oh.
Yeah. And now 1 push, 1 pull.
No, I gotta go to the pool, huh?
Yeah, you could feel it immediately that was something also. So either side. Yep, and then you're trying to pin this knee as you put your knee on me and step up to the...
knee on you.
Yeah, not critical, but because you're using this sort of length of your arm, you'll want to have your knee on me. If you were to drop down to a knee here, this can feel a little bit compromised.
Yeah.
But if you turn it into an underhook, then it's totally fine. Okay. It's sort of like if your knee's on the floor, your elbow will be to the floor. If your elbow's in the air, your knee will be on me. So like the heights sort of match each other, if that makes sense.